What's up, Splunkers? As you guys all have seen, you've joined as me. So I just want to let you guys know there's a little bit of a technical glitch in terms of the IT link that was sent out. So if you can manually change your name, and we will try to correct that throughout the program. But just to introduce myself, my name's Bobby Travis. I'm a Senior Operations Project Manager for the Legal Global Affairs Department. I'm also the president of our Black Employee Resource Group, BEAMS, which stands for Black Employees Achieve More at Splunk. I'm so excited as we close out our Black History Month today. We have a jam-packed conversation with 4 cybersecurity experts who have a combined total of 80+ years experience in this space. Now, recently, our company made an announcement that we are shifting our focus to build a safer and more resilient digital world. When I heard about the word resilience, I immediately thought about my roots, my people, the Black culture, and how we've had to build resilience through the challenges our community faced when trying to operate in an inequitable society. It became apparent to me that resilience starts with the people. So it's important for us to have this conversation and acknowledge how diversity plays a role and really is a key component to building corporate resilience. Now there are layers to defining diversity, whether you're thinking about ethnic backgrounds, your gender, sexual orientation, and so forth. And we'll explore a couple of those layers in today's discussion. So let's jump right in. We're going to kick off the conversation in full Splunk fashion, discussing our panelists' million data points. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Diana B. Allen. She's a Senior Technical Program Manager at Google. She's also on the board of Black Girls in Cyber. Welcome, Diana. Can you spend a few minutes sharing your million data points as it relates to your career journey and how you became a cybersecurity leader?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. So as Bobby mentioned, my name is Diana Allen. I live in the DC area, so originally by way of New Jersey, and I attended an HBCU, so I am a proud Howard alum. I obtained a degree in information systems, and I got a master's degree in management and then a doctorate degree in organizational leadership. And so a few interesting things is that I didn't necessarily want to become high hands-on tech. So I do not code. So I'm a cybersecurity professional that does not code. I would rather do anything but code. And so midway through my college career, I realized that I had more of a passion for people and writing, and I wanted to change my major, but I was almost done with school. And in true motherhood form, my mom informed me that I need to finish the degree that is more than halfway paid for and figure out what I want to do beyond that. And so I chose to pursue my education and focus on organizational leadership. A few other things: I am a first generation American. I am a wife. I have two beautiful daughters that are almost 5. One will be 5 tomorrow, and an 18-month-old. So I am an empowerment champion. And most of all, I'm a storyteller. So I'm really excited for this discussion and can't wait to jump into it.
Love that. Thank you for sharing your data points. Next, we have Mr. Larry Whiteside Jr., who's a veteran and currently the CISO for RegScale. Same question, can you spend a few minutes sharing your million data points as it relates to your career journey and how you became a cybersecurity leader?
Yeah, sure. So first off, thanks for having me. Some of you may have seen me before. I've spoken at Splunk a couple of times. And for me, I fell into this. I, differently than a good doctor, I did think I wanted to code. And so I graduated college in 94, but I graduated with a computer science degree. So I thought, hey, I want to code. But while I was in college, I happened to get an internship. And I too went to an HBCU, Houston Tillotson in the room. I got an internship doing it and realized that writing code in class and writing code in the real world were two vastly different things. And I hated every part of it. So my grandfather, who's a Tuskegee Airman, really pushed me to go and get my commission and join the military. And kicking and screaming, I did, just to set him up. And it turned out that, the military had technical careers. And me being a geek, I was like, all right, so let's follow that. And I did. And that's what really threw me into cyber. 8 years in the military, I turned down my commission. I turned down major and got out and jumped in the private sector because I felt private sector would be a lot more fun. And so I've been in private sector since 2002, having a blast. I've been very blessed to have a lot of roles as CISOs and a lot of different industries and verticals and a lot of different size companies. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for sharing. Now, this next space may look a little bit familiar. We have our very own LaLisha Hurt, who currently serves as an industry advisor for Public Sector Federal. She's a former CISO at GDIT and also a former deputy CISO at GE Corporation. Please share with us, LaLisha, your million data point highlights and how you came into the cybersecurity field.
Thanks, Bobby. And I am excited to be back with my Beams family once again. So thanks for the invite back, Bobby, to round out Black History Month. So my million data points, I identify as she, her. I am unapologetically Black. I am a daughter, sister, Yorkie mom, friend, STEM advocate, similar to Dr. Diana, diversity inclusion champion. I am a former CISO, as Bobby alluded to, also adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon University. And currently I am a public sector industry advisor for the federal government here at Splunk. And in my spare time, I do love building houses when I can find the time. So my journey into cyber was a bit non-traditional, but I do owe it all to male allyship and sponsorship. And I often tell people I didn't choose cyber, cyber chose me. So I started my career as an IT bank examiner in the financial services space back in 2002. I utilized my systems engineering master's or management degree to really break into governance, risk, and compliance, which was really my bread and butter for the very first, I would say, 10 years of my career. I traveled, I consulted, performed more audits and risk assessments than I could probably count. And this was in the healthcare space, government, retail, and manufacturing industries. And I truly loved it, right? I definitely saw myself doing this long term as it was comfortable and familiar for me. And so again, people often say or ask me, did you ever see yourself having a career in cyber? And I said, absolutely not. I never really considered it until one day back in 2012, a Black male CISO came to me and said, hey, LaLisha, all of the business unit CISOs have been asked to identify and name a deputy CISO for succession planning purposes. And I remember this conversation like it was yesterday. And I'm thinking to myself, why is he telling me this? And I thought about it and I was like, maybe he's going to tell me I'm going to get a new boss. So let's just go ahead and cut to the chase. And so I made it easy for him. And I said, you know, I think Ken would be great for this role because he's super technical. And I remember him looking at me confused and he said, no, LaLisha, I'm not naming Ken. I'm actually naming you. And so I'm like, me, and I started to get that knot. I don't know if people get that knot in the bottom of their stomach that, you know, you sometimes ignore, but it's that knot to say, you know, things are about to get real uncomfortable. And so you might as well embrace it. And so I did. And so I said yes to that role, which opened up so many other doors to additional CISO roles at larger companies. And again, all of this is thanks to male sponsorship by none other than Mr. Corey Jackson, who is on this call with us today. So thank you, Corey, for your allyship and sponsorship.
That is such an amazing story and how sponsorship really can be impactful in your career, especially as a female leader. It shows how important sponsorship is. So I want to put a call out there to all the senior leaders on the call. If you haven't already positioned yourself to be a sponsor, really try to pave the pathway forward for others, because it's not only a learning journey for you, but for folks like myself who are looking to build our career in the leadership space as well. So thank you for sharing that. And last, certainly not least, we have Mr. Corey Jackson, who LaLisha was just speaking about. He is the owner and chief security strategist of Sacro LLC, a cybersecurity advisory firm. We want to round this question off and have you share some of your million data points and how you got into the cybersecurity space.
Yeah, definitely. Good morning, good afternoon. And LaLisha's making me almost choke up and tear up here, get me off my game. So
It's the first time you're hearing this story live.
Yeah. No, it's well-deserved. And quick shout out for whoever chose the intro song. You know, I'm a member and brother of Omega Sci-Fi Fraternity Incorporated, so I know there's probably some Deltas out there who probably enjoyed that song as well. So my journey kind of started, was a day where I was selling drugs. And I'll stop, you know, I like that dramatic effect because it did have to do with selling drugs, but on the right side of the fence. So I was a law enforcement officer, and I'll tell a quick little story. We would do reverse stings, and reverse stings is when I, as a police officer, I go in, make the deal. After the deal, we make the arrest. So this given day, I make the sale. We're doing like street corner tactics, and older gentleman wants to buy drugs. I lean in the car, make the sale, give the code word, and the sergeant I had at the time was like, hey, if you feel you can just do the arrest yourself, go ahead and do it. If not, let him drive or walk down the street and then we'll do the arrest. So this guy was very old. I said, okay, I can make the arrest. So I pull my badge out, and this guy decides he doesn't want to be arrested today. So he floors the car. Now I'm on the passenger side of the car leaning in the window, and I start getting dragged down the street by this guy. You know, end up slamming the car into park, dropping the transmission. He gets arrested. But after that moment, I said, there has to be a better, simpler way to live life. Therefore, I went back to school while working as a police officer, got my degree in computer science, then transitioned on from there. And at this time, I was in Florida, moved to the Washington, D.C. area, where I started pursuing my career in the IT space, working for federal agencies. And I always tried to marry up the best of both worlds, where I took the new degree in IT focus within law enforcement agencies. So I had opportunity doing time with IRS, U.S. Department of State, and the FBI, and various facets of IT security, and then transitioned into industry, corporate America, and then at times doing things for myself through my own company. So that's kind of a highlight of my million data points.
Thanks, Corey. So now that we've heard about our panelists' career journeys, we want to take some time and hear about some of the challenges they face as Black leaders in cybersecurity. So starting with you, Diana, what are some of the challenges or misconceptions you've had to overcome being a Black leader in tech?
So thanks for the question. So I think I've had a few, but I will say one of the main things that I've experienced, especially since I work in cyber, is being a woman in tech more so than being Black in tech. And that's just my lived experience. And I can share a brief story. Since Corey opened up the storytelling wagon, I'm going to go into a client meeting. And I was one of the few female managers. I had majority of male direct reports. I'm a whopping, very tall, 5'5" person. And so I went into a meeting, I entered into the room, and my team was already there. So I was coming from another meeting. And the client came in, and I had just come in right before him. And he said, "Which one of you guys is in charge here? Let's get going." And I was like, I am the guy that is in charge. And so, and he just kind of turned a little red, and he looked, and he's like, "Oh, okay." And because I had just walked into the room, one of my team members had come in, and he got up and he gave me the seat so that I could lead the meeting. And so that's happened to me quite a few times where I am the guy that is in charge and not expected. I just kind of changed the lens of what cybersecurity looks like in the industry, as well as who is leading the effort and who's leading the project. I've also had a few experiences and instances where I've said something and someone else has said the same thing. So I will say 2 + 2 is 4. And someone will come behind me and say, if you add 1 + 3, it is 4. And now it's suddenly gospel. It's amazing. It's thoughtful. And so I've had to learn how to pivot and say, you know what, thank you for undergirding and supporting what I was saying and continuing to move on. And so I think that those things happen. And a misconception is that you don't belong. And so I don't really think about, do I belong? I just think, why wouldn't I belong? And when I shifted that lens just a little bit, it made me feel more empowered to execute, to share my point of view. And so I think if we look for places where we do not fit, we will find them. And so I fit. And I am a welcome addition, and I have great perspective. I have good insight. And so I am excited to join in the dialogue because I have something to add. And so why not me?
I love that. Why not me? You know, as a female leader, it's tough trying to navigate in a male dominated industry. We know that technology is very male dominated, and just to have that shift in your mindset to say, thank you for supporting an idea that I've had, you know, and being more collaborative in thought instead of combative is really impactful in how we change the narrative and how we are treated as female leaders. So I appreciate you sharing that highlight today. You know, and Larry, I want to kick it over to you to chime in and share some of the challenges and misconceptions you've experienced as a Black leader.
Yeah, so for me, it's interesting. You know, when we talked the other day, I went in one direction, but I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction. So me, I have the opposite problem. So I'm 6'6", 240. And so when I come into a room, I've been told, right, that I take over a room because of my size and stature when I'm standing in front of a room. And the misconception has always been, and this has actually come from a lot of us, right, my peers and others that see me, is that I've got it all together, and that I don't have imposter syndrome, and that like I'm not that. Wait, the way you exude yourself is completely confident. And I realized that I went through this journey for years. I used to come into a room and try and dress like my peers, right? Where, you know, they would just have a button up on and some khakis. And so when I did that, I wasn't heard. Nobody heard me, right? And so I was like, well, wait, why is no one hearing me? And so that sort of pushed my imposter syndrome up deeper into my throat. So then I wasn't enunciating myself, and the articulate things that people said about me, I was sort of stumbling over my words. I'm like, wait, what is going on? And so then what I did was I had to take a look in the mirror. I had to take a look in the mirror and say, why am I trying to fit into what their model is, right? I need to create my own model. I need to do what I like. I need to do what I need to do to be comfortable in the settings that I'm walking into, regardless of what they think. And then allow me, because I'm a people person at the end of the day, the big guy in me is ultimately a people person who loves everybody. I've got 8 children, 5 children with my ex-wife, 2 stepdaughters, and an adopted daughter that I adopted. Like, I love people. I've got multiple pets. Like, I'm a people person. So why am I allowing these other people who don't know me, right, and I don't necessarily know well, to dictate how I present myself? Once I changed my overall demeanor, once I changed my overall look, how I presented myself physically, right, I then began having the confidence back to demonstrate what I knew. And I started to be heard. And it was interesting how I watched that dynamic change. But I think it was a combination of how I saw myself, but then how I allowed others to begin to see me once I let my true self come out and started being me.
Wow. I mean, that's interesting that you talk about attire specifically as it relates to us working in tech, because we have a very lax attire in tech, and yet some communities still don't feel comfortable or being taken as serious when they show up in a hoodie and a t-shirt. But that's Splunk all day. We wear hoodies and tees. And so the fact that you had to change the way that you dress to be taken more seriously or respected in terms of the contributions that you brought to the table, especially as a Black leader, is very telling. I'm just curious if there's others who have experienced this in their careers. So please feel free to share in the chat and share how you've overcome that as well. And to round off this question, LaLisha, I'd love if you could join us and chime in and share some of the challenges and misconceptions you've faced as a Black leader in tech.
Yeah, so thanks, Bobby. And I do have my Splunk Resilience t-shirt on, but I do have my jacket. So I'm with you, Larry. Sometimes you gotta be yourself, your authentic self, and how you best show up. So my challenges were very similar to Dr. Diana B. Allen. And yes, I love calling her whole name publicly to acknowledge her PhD accomplishment, because I know the passion that went into her dissertation topic, which is around this very conversation. So when I think about this question, Bobby, I'm hearing a trend, and I do think back to a time earlier in my career. I was in a think tank room with my male counterparts. So think about this as the type of meeting that's like a brainstorming session, right? Where you can throw all your ideas out there as long as they tie to kind of increasing revenue for the company. So everyone's talking, they're giving their opinions, I'm listening, I'm taking it all in. And I finally get a chance to kind of interject my one idea, right, to which they initially disregarded. And they kind of proceeded to talk over me as if I wasn't there. The very next day, so the day ends, we have day 2, we come back. And for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to call him Ted. And hopefully there's no Teds on this line. Just know that I'm not talking about you, but we're going to call him Ted. So Ted shares with the group the very same exact idea that I had the day before, right? He didn't change anything about it. He didn't bring any additional data points, very similar to what Diana just said, right? And it was around our go-to-market strategy for a cyber shared service model. Miraculously, they loved it, right? It was the best idea ever because Ted said it. Not only did they love it, they adopted it, they gave him the adequate funding to implement it. And then they put me on the team to lead delivery, which I did. And I did it within budget. I had a schedule, yielded the company millions and millions in revenue growth as a result, and we were feeling good about it. Fast forward 2 weeks later, an email comes out announcing Ted's promotion to VP of Cyber. And it thanks him for his idea. It thanks him for his delivery on this think tank project. So here is misconception number 1 that I just want to put out there. If you work hard and deliver results, you will be rewarded with promotions, advancements based on your own talents and your own merit. Not always the case, right? While Ted was rewarded with a promotion, my reward was, guess what? More think tank project delivery work, all the way up until the day I decided to separate from the company for not seeing and acknowledging my worth and impact. And while I was bitter, I was also resilient, right? And the valuable lesson that I learned in that situation was that delivering results is great, but building the right relationships, networking, and putting yourself out there for visibility are just as equally important for career mobility advancement. And it's something that I kind of wish I would have mastered earlier in my career, but I didn't until after I had this particular TED encounter. So the moral of the message here is sometimes we have to be our own advocates. We have to be our own champions and encourage ourselves and not always rely on others to do it for us all the time. And I think as a Black resilient community, we often shy away from talking about our accomplishments. We shy away from talking about our contributions and our impact at work, but it's okay to share them because guess what? We're all human. People forget. And sometimes we have to remind them of all the great work that we do each and every day that truly makes a difference.
I want to add a little piece to that. As part of that reminding them it's important to ensure that you are using an opportunity to use your voice to correct people when they are wrong, right? And sometimes we feel, first off, there's tons of jobs in this career field, and if you build a network, you will literally, right? The network, I can't even put into words how important building a network is. But in those moments, we have to be authentic and say, hey, listen, I appreciate you brought those things up and that you talked about those, but I was the one who accomplished those. And maybe you don't do it in the moment, but maybe behind the scenes, you go back and say, just so you're aware. Because a lot of times we don't know how other people, perceive us or what others are saying behind the scenes, because somebody may have given someone else credit and the person who espoused the giving of the credit had no idea that you were even involved. And I've been in exact similar situation.
Absolutely, Larry.
Well, that was impactful to share, and just hearing how self-advocacy really just plays an important role in us building our own perceptions with others, and also hearing about the male sponsorship. I think it's very telling. If folks have sponsors, they don't have to be the same gender as you. I think that's another way in which we can bridge the gap in terms of representation in female leaders, is by, taking away that that disconnect and saying that my sponsor has to look exactly like me. They oftentimes don't look like you. So just keep that in mind. And I want to shift gears a little bit and bring you back into the discussion, Corey. And I want to see if you can share with us how diversity has played a role in corporate resilience, and what is the blueprint to bridging cultural resilience and corporate resilience to protect business integrity?
Yeah, thank you. There's so much I want to say, so hopefully I can get it all out in a palatable way, and even connecting back with Larry and LaLisha and Dr. Allen. I think that one thing I'll say overarchingly is, how does it play into resilience, is allow people to continue, people of color to continue to have a seat at the table. I've been in some of those like situations where when you're not seen as being ready or worthy, you're invisible. Then when you are ready, then you can be seen as being arrogant. Kind of like Larry, I had someone tell me before, by the way I dressed, I came in the room walking arrogantly. I was like, I don't even know how it's possible. How can someone walk arrogantly into a room? But really, I guess that corporate diversity and resilience is recognizing us for the skills and value we bring to the table, because we're always being judged. We're always being judged, and I think we just need to be conscious and aware of that, because I think then there's one part of corporate responsibility and then our part of personal responsibility. And I think that personal responsibility, just like Larry said, calling folks out, putting them in check at the right time, in the right place, in the right way. But then there's a corporate responsibility to know when someone is being overshadowed or assumptions are being made. So that's one part. Then the other part is corporate, business, government diversity. To me, is easy. Be what you are, represent what you are. If you're a global company with a footprint in multiple countries, then let that be the makeup and schema of your workforce and personnel. When I was a cop, there's always, hey, if there's 7% Black, 3% Hispanic, whatever those ratio and percentages are, you always try to build your police department force with those same percentages, just to be equal representation. So I think that's that corporate obligation to be able to match your environment. And then last thing I would say too around diversity and being resilient is, for us, people of color, sometimes stepping outside the box. I think there's things personally in our culture, our norm, we don't normally do, but it's things we need to do to kind of play the corporate game, again, to be able to navigate the field. And what I mean by that is, my biggest career opportunity opened when I decided to host a happy hour at my house. All my peers, my boss came, and it's that next day, my career skyrocketed. That's an example. Or, the team is going out for dinner afterwards. Most people sometimes say, I don't want to go. It's after 5. I shouldn't have to go. Well, go. Even if you just check in, stay 2 minutes and leave. Or, well, I don't drink. I don't go. My wife doesn't drink either, but her trick was always tonic with a splash of cranberry juice and a lime. And she was there. people didn't bother her, versus if she said she didn't drink and she went there and didn't get a drink, people would focus on that. So I know that's a lot and it's kind of been all over the place, but I just want to just highlight some of those things as nuggets of how to navigate the field, corporate resiliency, and more so personal individual resiliency.
Yeah, that's important. You know, I think companies sometimes lose sight that as global organizations, we have to have the footprint of those who we, you know, serve in other countries, and also just being innovative in how we network outside of the workday. I know when we were in office more, we had a lot of happy hours and events and things like that, and opportunities to get together for us to build those meaningful relationships. So now in more of a hybrid world, we need to think through how we can build those relationships in a different capacity so that we can still grow and be impactful as diverse leaders within tech. And so LaLisha, just kicking it over to you, I'd love to hear some of your insights on this question and talk about how corporate resilience plays a role in diversity.
So yeah, I definitely think diversity plays a big role. And Korn Ferry actually did a study of this that links it together, the two together. And so we're Splunk, so we're a data company. So I got to throw out the data points here for folks to back up what we're saying here, right? So the company interviewed 28 senior Black profit and loss leaders at Fortune 500 companies. So these are your C-suite executives at companies like Home Depot, GE, TIA, Lowe's, Capital One, AT&T, the list goes on, right? And it talks about why Black leaders are necessary in the workforce to drive resilience. And it boils down to 4 key findings, and they're all related to adaptability and persistence. And that is, 1, we are the masters of our own destiny, meaning we take highly strategic, analytical, and planful approaches to our professional development, taking the initiative and being accountable for our own career progress. Number 2 was, we are willing to risk it all. We're not afraid to put everything on the line, even if it meant possible failure. So we take on those more complicated and complex challenges that manage ambiguity. 3, we are not easily shaken. We don't let setbacks set us back. We power through obstacles and face adversity with grace. And then lastly, number 4, and I'm sure this resonates with a lot of folks on the call because it did with me, we have a strong need to overperform and outperform, right? Because we're always conscious of the confronting misconceptions about our skills and our performance. So having to work twice as hard and accomplish twice as much was a common theme in the study by these leaders. And then lastly, this is my favorite part, right? Like, why corporate resilience? Korn Ferry concluded this section of the study with 2 powerful business outcome data points that I want to end with. And that is, ethnically diverse executive teams are 70% more likely to capture new markets than their less diverse peers, 70%, right? And if that's not enough, they also generate 38% more in revenue from innovative products and services. So yes, diversity plays a huge role when it comes to corporate resilience, but I'll even go a bit further and say it can also impact the bottom line in a positive way as well.
Yeah, and I'll give some pull through on that. The reason is everybody comes from a different makeup. From the day you're born to the day you get to the place you're at right now, you have unique experiences to you as an individual, which makes you see things from a different lens. I couldn't wear Corey's glasses. Corey can't wear Dr. Allen's glasses. Dr. Allen can't wear Melissa Andrews' glasses, right? Because each of us has a different prescription for the lens that we see things through based on what we've gone through. So with that, that's how, as businesses are building themselves up to be better, they have to look at problems from all different sides through different lenses that help them make better decisions. The challenge becomes, do they enable those voices to be heard? You can hire them all day, but if you don't allow the voices of those different perspectives to be heard and feel like they have a seat at the table or are being part of solving the problem, then it doesn't matter.
Love that. And you just kind of organically came in. I was going to call on you, Larry, to see if you had any insights to share on how diversity played a role in corporate resilience. That was a good way to round off that discussion. And so now, we've heard a bit about your journey, some of the challenges and misconceptions you all have endured as Black leaders. I'd like to spend a little bit of time just discussing some of the emerging trends in cybersecurity. So Diana, can you spend a few minutes sharing what are some of the emerging, not emergency, cybersecurity trends you're seeing, and how does that play into the diverse lens mitigating risk?
I think it is an emergency in some instances. I think that there are a couple, and I can give a few examples. So in 2020, Apple released an update to their iPhone. The update had received a ton of backlash because there was an incompatibility with hearing aids and listening devices. The problem was that it caused static, it caused garbled sounds, it caused intermittent breaks in the conversation. And for people who are differently abled in terms of hearing, it was detrimental. And they noted it and they said, yes, we know this is a problem and we'll release an update soon. But there are specific hearing aid devices that are configured for iOS. And so there was an incompatibility there. And that's a lifestyle, that's an impact on lifestyle. A few years prior, the Apple Health Act, and I'm not picking on Apple at all, right? And I am just pointing out a couple of examples. The Apple Health Act, the Vice President of Software Engineering mentioned that we are releasing this health app. It's going to track all of the metrics that are important to you, and it's going to be a one-stop shop. It's going to be amazing. And so when the app was released, it had ability to check your blood alcohol level and your heart rate and all of these different things through sweat and through different data points. But one thing that it was missing was a menstrual tracker. And that hit the news and it hit all of these different platforms saying that Apple didn't care about women's health. And it took almost a year for them to release that capability. And so something as natural as that eliminated a key part of the market. Women make up more than 50% of the population. So it wasn't just a small element, it was something that was major and that happens in so many women, so many people's lives throughout generations. And so those are some areas where you really need to look at, what does your product development team look like? What are your design teams looking like? Are we thinking about not just race, but gender, but abilities? I mentioned earlier that I'm a first-generation American. My mom speaks with an accent. So if you are creating, I don't hear it, but other people hear it. If you're creating some type of speech recognition software, are you taking into consideration different dialects, accents? What if someone's a survivor of a stroke? What if someone has palsy? How are you capturing the fact that their speech may be slurred or different? And so I share this because it ties directly, I'll add some data elements as well. What's considered femtech, things that impact women, things that impact that part of the population, is slated to be worth, let me check my notes, worth $50 billion by 2025, with a B, billion. And so there's a huge opportunity for market share there as we seek to add more diverse people to our discussions. And so as Splunk continues to evolve and develop tools and technologies and capabilities, start thinking about not only who you have in the room at the table, did you consider it, but really who are the people that we're serving and what are the needs? And so those are some trends that I've seen. Those are some things that we're working on. And for my shameless plug, doing it in a secure and compliant manner because I'm a security person, okay? So I will transition over to the next person in case someone has additional elements to add.
Yeah, so I'll jump in on that real quick, sorry. So the AI, everybody here, right, we're in security, we recognize that, artificial intelligence is a thing that pretty much every cybersecurity company is talking about. They're integrating into their tech, right? So this artificial intelligence mantra around identity is a problem. If I don't know how many people have seen the documentary on Netflix where it talks about Black women, right, are barely 90% recognition, right? I mean, if you think about Black people in general, how many shades of skin do we typically bring to the table? Just look at the shades on the screen. So if when they're building these AI algorithms on the back end, if they've got a group of white men in the room or a group of people that all look exactly the same, how are they going to be able to test to determine the efficacy of that against other shades of people? And they're not seeing it. And so it's a humongous problem that is literally growing and growing and growing by the day.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, Larry, I was going to hit that too. I think, right, there's that conversation you always hear. There are some organizations trying to be socially responsible to start birthing that conversation, but I haven't seen it with action. And what I mean by that is, who's at the table when you're trying to say, is this right? How do we fix it? And I think we need more of that. You know, is that an opportunity with that emerging trend to be a new vertical of cyber, if you will, from a cyber police perspective? Someone in the organization has to be responsible. It's not privacy, it's not the chief data officer, it's not the CIO. So it's a gap. And that hole is getting bigger with the advancement of AI. So I agree with that one. You know, last year at RSA, I did a presentation with a peer around safe technology. She's the executive director over the information security labs. And we had this conversation too around just emerging trends, like just what's centric to that is the loss of self, if you will. I think that the more and more we gravitate and need technology, we lose our identity. Our identity is monetized. And there's that gap as well too, because you have security over here, privacy over here, and then you overlay them, you have safe technology. I should be able to go to a website and purchase something without, you know, being responsible to read a 14-page cookie consent or see what all data they're pulling, or ad tech is pulling my data, being monetized. So now next time I go log into a computer and I may have my browser synced, it's already pushing me product. So at some point, we do need to balance those emerging trends with, I guess, humanitarian type of mindset and focus. The other thing I would say is emerging, which a bit sounds like par from the course from the cybersecurity side of the house, is just threats. Threats are emerging, you know, proliferation of applications, OT environments talking to IT environments, more and more interconnections. So therefore we have more and more emergent threats. And I think as a organization positions themselves to be resilient, they need to think about those threats. You know, when I hire, I definitely look for diversity across the board, you know, and of course, being a Black male, I'm going to make sure there's representation, but also too, I'm not telling myself a false lie that I'm just going to go hire all Black people. I mean, that's limited as well. So naturally for me, you know, no plug for myself, but I just always organically have been able to build those diverse teams just because I am looking at the skill set I want, and I can have 10 people with the same skill set, but it's usually a soft skill I'm looking for. And that soft skill complements a soft skill somebody else on the team doesn't have. So now we are 360. That's been my recipe. That's kind of going back to the earlier question. That's my blueprint. And I've been able to trend with that. And I think that that type of mindset, as you look at an emerging trend from a threat perspective, allows and positions a company to be better able to respond. You know, back in the day in the cyberspace, it was you were great as a good cybersecurity organization if you didn't have a breach. Those days are gone. You're going to have one. Now the true test is how quickly can you identify and contain it and respond. And that very well balanced, diverse team, expertise wise and color skin wise, makes that happen. Again, organically and naturally, without purposely trying to find the right people in the right place all the time.
So I want to give one point real quick. So you said soft skills, and just from a standpoint of not correcting you, but giving you an alternative thought, right? I have moved away from calling it soft skills because the term soft associated with skills that are not technical has been deemed in some circles to be geared towards women. So we call them business skills because they are really about being able to understand the business, being able to articulate yourself, being able to write, right? Those types of things that go outside of the typical technical skills. So for
Fair
everybody
point.
here
Yeah.
listening, right? When you hear that term soft skills, it is appropriate to communicate, hey, we try and utilize the term business skills now instead of soft skills.
So +1, +1, +1. I think, Bobby, we may have another session on maybe AI and product development, right? Because there's a lot to unpack there. And I think ensuring that our software developers do have a diverse lens when building resilience into our platform for our customers, and also just ensuring when our products go through kind of the life cycle process, are we being inclusive when we select our beta testers? Right, which is something I'm sure our product team here at Splunk thinks about each and every day. So I think we can pull the thread on that a little bit more, maybe in a future conversation, because there's a lot to unpack there. And I would say lastly, just to tie this all back to kind of trends, I think another thing I'm hearing from CISOs, and Corey touched on this quite a bit, is that absolutely our attacks are getting sophisticated and they're on the rise. And so CISOs are constantly saying they need to be able to drive resilience, right? Which aligns to our market position here at Splunk. And I think the way to help mitigate those risks is by doing three things. And Corey kind of touched on it as well, but I think making this real for us here at Splunk is that, one, we have the capabilities to be able to provide comprehensive visibility and insights into our customer environment. Two, we have the capability to ensure rapid detection and investigation with our platform. And then three, optimize for response, which is what Corey said, right? So that our customers can withstand and even recover quickly from threats and bounce back to business as usual. So Splunk has a role in this, just like every other company.
Absolutely. And I'm appreciating all this conversation. I'm in a non-technical role, so I'm just eating it all up in this moment live. But I wanted to allow a little bit of time for some Q&A. I know we've got some questions that have been sent in the chat. So Melissa, I don't know if you want to call them out or send them to me.
I can start with this one. Do you ever feel, this is to all three of the panelists, like you have your own bias with how you manage Black professionals, where you're harder on your own because you fear they will make the culture look bad if they're not fully on point always?
I'll jump in on that. So yes, but not because they'll make the culture look bad. It's because I expect more, right? I am going to just like my children, right? So when I hire diverse candidates, I help them understand that they, like we all know and have heard probably from our parents as well, is that we have to work twice as hard to reach the same level as our white counterparts. And I want to make sure not only do they understand that, but that I'm enabling them to achieve that. Now, is everybody going to always do that? Absolutely not. But I let them know that that's what I expect of them. That's what, if they got hired into my team, right, whether they're a direct report to me or multiple reports down, if they got hired into my team, that means that they were exceptional at what they do and what they were bringing to the table. And I'm going to hold them to that level of being exceptional, and being just average and being just a regular member of the team isn't okay for me.
Yeah, same for me, spot on. I personally have high standards and expectations, so I carry that into the workforce. But I am conscious of that. I had a former CIO at GE pull me to the side one day, and he says, "You're a good leader." He said, "But what make you a great leader is identifying and recognizing that people can't move as fast as you." And that said a lot to me, like, okay, right, I am high achieving, so sometimes I have to ratchet it down to bring people along with me and bring them up.
Yes, and I can attest to that, having worked for Corey. So I'm like, hey, I'm along for the ride. I did feel at times he was, a bit harder, but I realized that when we go into board presentations or in front of the executive committee, he wants to make sure we're represented well. So I can definitely vouch for Corey and his intentional leadership around building folks up and just making sure you have diversity across the team.
Awesome. So LaLisha, you mentioned, this is the question that came in, that high visibility and challenging projects are areas where Black employees look to make their mark to position themselves for greater leadership. This has been found in Harvard Business Studies as well. So LaLisha mentioned that to the panel. Is this just how it is? Do we have to look for these high visibility, challenging projects? They're generally high risk, high reward, right? Because if you mess up, then that's a problem. Is this the only way that Black talent can position themselves for greater leadership roles?
Absolutely not. And I would say, in our community, we typically run to the fire, right? We want to work on those projects. That is something that I did early in my career because I thought, it would give the visibility, it would give me the confidence and give my leadership the confidence that I can handle anything. I do not do that anymore. Let me just be clear. I do not sign up for those type of assignments anymore, because here's the thing. I know that I have proven my value. I don't have to prove my value anymore, right? And so I think when you're early in your career, and this is just lessons learned, we typically do that, right? Because you do have to show your worth. You do have to build the credibility. But I will say, absolutely not. This is not the only way. And honestly, I would say I wouldn't recommend it. What I would recommend, though, is something that Corey said, and this is something that took me a very long time to master, and this is building visibility through your network, right? I was the person's like, Corey, I'm not going to this happy hour, right? Like, I'm not going to these people's houses. But Corey was the one who said, hey, listen, this is how people trust you. You're good. You're great at delivering, but if people don't know you and they don't know what you're doing, none of that matters. So what I will say is look for opportunities to build your brand, your personal brand, look for opportunities to gain visibility. And it does not always have to be those hair on fire projects. And if you've taken on them before in your career, you do not have to keep doing that over and over and over again to prove yourself. You've already proven yourself. So I would say focus on the personal brand, focus on the visibility and the network, building relationships. This is something that I think is an opportunity for our community. It's something that I struggled with early in my career, and it's something that I had to get mentored and coached on throughout my career.
I want to piggyback on what LaLisha's mentioning. So I'm going to put the research hat on and give a little piggyback from my dissertation as well. So what often happens to Black leaders, regardless of gender, is they're pulled into projects that are already set up to fail. And what I mean by that, you are given a project, you're brought in, you have this great skill set. Corey, we need you. Larry, we need you. Diana, we need you. Come in. We want you to come in and do this amazing thing that we have not been able to successfully lift, launch, and execute. And then what happens is you come into the role and you come in and you're excited and you're on fire and you lack structural empowerment. And so what is structural empowerment? It's budget, it's headcount, it's resources, it's the ability to hire without, and it happens to us where you want to bring in folks and now all of a sudden it has to go through some mysterious hiring committee and approvals where your counterparts don't have to go through that. And so now you have all these loops and holes to go to jump through so that you can get the headcount to execute, or you get 6 months to make reasonable progress and show something, and your counterparts had 18 months. And so those tend to happen to minority executives, and people call it the glass cliff, but it's sometimes we're walking on glass floors and they cave under pressure. And so we don't have to worry about the glass ceiling. I think with Black people, they call it the concrete ceiling because you don't even see the top. We have to worry about everything that's around us and what type of support, because sometimes you don't have the luxury to fail because it's already a struggling project. And so while LaLisha is mentioning, we don't always have to run in like Captain Save 'em, but we do have to also ask the questions to make sure that it's a recipe for success. Because too often they will bring someone in and say, see, we brought in Diana, she was the X, Y, and Z person and she didn't do well. But when Bob had it, it was successful. No, it wasn't. It was headed to the red then too, but I just came in at a time and I didn't have the perspective to know. And so that's also a place where sponsors and allies can help you and strategize around you and share their resources and their network to undergird you and help you be successful and not fail as hard and as fast. And so
that's a cycle we can get into that doesn't serve our career well, because if you go run towards that fire, you put it out successfully, you're given another fire where your counterparts are given less. Right. And Dr. Allen, you gave us the Harvard version, so I'm gonna give you a street version. I had a leader say, when people who F up, move up, people who do more, get more. So be conscious of that out there too, that yeah, you can put those problems out, but use that to your advantage and not build work or role around you that traps you from organizational growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll add to this on the people side of this, right? So I can't explain how important the network is other than by saying this. In the 30 years I've been in this, there's not been a training class, a presentation, or anything that I've attended that's been more educational to me or more impactful to me than the network that I've built over my career, right? The network that you build is going to be full of people that are going to help guide you and give you all sorts of guidance, advice, insight based on the challenges that they face, based on things that they've gone through. Some of them may have worked at a company that you're getting ready to go work for, or work for a leader that you're getting ready to go work for. The things that you will learn from building a network of people that you can build trust around and be able to openly share will be more valuable to you over your career than anything else you can ever do. I cannot stress that enough.
Well, thank you all for giving us these hearty gems and moments of wisdom to noodle on. And I hope you guys are finding this helpful as you all create plans and strategize on how you want to diversify your teams and up-level us as Black leaders. But I don't want to leave without having a call to action. So I'm going to kick this over to you, Corey, and each of you guys can just spend 1 minute, literally, to share what you think Splunk can do to improve business resilience while working toward diversifying their workforce.
Keep doing this. This was great, learnable for me. We'll use the new term, business skills, going forward. Continuing to give minorities, people of color, opportunities in executive development. Anything you can do with external organizations, I think. You have like Cybersecurity, you have the new Black minority security, and I'm probably messing that name of that group up. But there's
Blacks
more.
in cyber, there's a number of them.
Yep. So just continue to sponsor groups as such, because that next generation, being able to have a big box of Splunk to support them, cultivate them, hire them, or set them up for future executive level roles would be great.
Yep, I'm kick it over to you, LaLisha.
Yeah, so if you're in a DEI role of influence, which everyone on this call is, you'll want to write this down, 3 things. And I'll try to do it in a minute, Bobby, but like this is the call to action, right? The takeaways, we said a lot. But number 1, create a culture of shared responsibility and belonging. What does this look like? For high performing, diverse, and resilient talent, ask them what role within the organization best aligns with their career aspirations. And then take it a step further, assign an ELT member from that function to actually coach and sponsor them until they get there, right? And this is an approach where leaders and employees can work together, right, in tandem to build pipeline and advance kind of Black talent for high performing individuals. That is an actionable thing that does work. I did it at a previous company, it works. The second thing, shatter the glass cliff. Dr. Allen talked about this. What does this mean? It means organizations that continue to require Black professionals to repeatedly prove their value despite their demonstrated success are only causing their pipeline to be depleted, right? And otherwise is impacting their bottom line. So sometimes we have to self-reflect, and this is hard, truly ask ourselves, am I asking my Black leaders to prove themselves in ways that their peers are not? Right. And unfortunately, this unconscious bias shows up during performance management cycle. It shows up in performance cycles, right? And this is a trend that I'm hearing. So here's the thing. If I can't objectively communicate to Bobby what the next level for my role looks like, or if I can't articulate to Corey and Larry what success measures look like for my promotion within my role, then we've truly failed, right, our employees as an organization. And then lastly, I'll touch on this really quickly. We talked about blueprint. This is a tough one. Corey mentioned it. If you cannot build a blueprint on your own and you don't know where to start, partner with an outside organization, right? Like a Korn Ferry, like some of these cyber organizations to help you. I did this at one of my previous organizations and there was no shame, right, in my game. I was smart enough to know that a few people cannot shift the culture of a global 30,000 person company by themselves. And so in doing so, we were able to increase leader representation by 30%, which is huge. And so I think these 3 things, the common call to action here is one thing, and that's pipeline. Similar to how we build customer pipeline for our Splunk platform, we have to build a diverse pipeline today if we want to improve resilience for tomorrow, because the organizations that do, they've been known, and we've dropped the data points, they've been known to outpace their competition even during uncertain times.
Thank you.
So
I'm going to turn to you, Larry, and then Diana. You want to chime in? Real quick?
I have one piece to add behind what LaLisha was mentioning. So I took a look at the Splunk DEI commitments, and a couple of things that I noticed was Splunk is committed to growing a diverse workforce, enforcing, nurturing a culture of inclusion, and driving positive change. We even created a DISCO, which is a committee, right? And I think when I looked at that and I looked at the mission statement as to why someone should choose Splunk, there's an overwhelming amount of mention of empowerment, empowering the teams to innovate, to drive change, to help reduce identification and remediation and identifying issues. But empowerment is not translated into the DEI discussion. And so I would challenge you, and I would challenge the leaders to take a look at that and look at what you have stated versus practice. Is it really implemented? And empowerment is not just a board member, a leader of VP challenge. We're talking about the first line manager. Are you taking your direct reports' work and bringing it to the meeting and excluding them? That's a lack of empowerment. We love to have a round table, a listening circle, a think tank, all of these things around diversity and inclusion. We love a good roadmap. We may even cry. We will cry, we will hold hands, we will do all of those things. But when it comes down to it and the rubber meets the road, what does your hiring committee look like? What does your promotion committee look like? What does your compensation committee look like? What are those conversations have? Who are in those rooms? Because from my experience, I found that those are the most closely guarded rooms. That's limited by level, that's limited by title. And so that's where some diversity of thought really needs to happen, which is when you're not in the room, who's talking about your promotion, your compensation, and whether or not you're getting hired. Those rooms and tables are not diverse. And so I didn't have insight into that based off of my research on Splunk, but I will share that your mission statements and delivery highly focused on empowering your teams to deliver amazing results for your clients. Your diversity, your commitment to that does not have as much of a focus on empowerment, but is definitely theoretical in nature. So those are my suggestions to you.
I love it.
So-
Thank you for making it, directly related to us. And Larry, you want to close us out with the final thought?
I do. So I've got two things, one for people and one for Splunk. So I'm going to deal with people first. So when you happen to be that only person in the room that looks differently, that's got that responsibility at the executive level, do not allow yourself to fall into unicorn syndrome. Now, what is unicorn syndrome? I'm glad you asked. Unicorn syndrome is something that I've realized happens when some of us get into a room where we're the only one, where we then feel like, because others make us feel like we are a unicorn because you are a Black person that happens to be in a room, oh, you made it. And so I have met and run across some people in my career that have gotten in the room and now feel special and do not and will not do anything to try and get others into the room because they do not want to lose that feeling of being special. It happens. We don't think it happens, but it happens, and it happens way more than we realize. So don't fall into the unicorn syndrome because those around you are making you feel like you are this special snowflake because you made it. Recognize that you are there for a reason. You need to get more people like yourself there so that you can ultimately make the organization better. For Splunk as an organization, it's important for every leader in Splunk to realize that there's no problems socioeconomically across the entire globe that has ever happened that's been solved just by the disenfranchised people. It takes those who are also not disenfranchised to lean in, recognize the problem, stand up, raise their hand, and use their voice. So all of those who do not look like this room and this Zoom of people, you have a responsibility to the people in this room and to yourself and to your counterparts that look like you and to the organization and its bottom line to stand up, recognize it's a problem, and use your voice and use your position to change it.
Larry just gave us a sermon to close us out. I hope you guys wrote down that background scripture. But yeah, I just want to thank all of you, all the panelists for joining us today, and thank those who hung on. I know we're 5 minutes after, so Dr. Diana Allen, Mr. Larry Whiteside Jr., Ms. LaLisha Hurt, and Mr. Corey Jackson, thank you all for bringing this conversation to the forefront at Splunk. And just as a personal reflection, the manifestation of where we strive to be as an organization as it relates to female leaders, cultural representation, it becomes more tangible when we're able to see folks that look like us in the roles that we strive to achieve in our careers. And I just want to reiterate that diverse voices matter, right? So they are the building blocks to creating the safer and more resilient digital world that we strive to achieve here at Splunk. And we need to leverage our Splunk village and embrace having these uncomfortable conversations so that we can grow as a diverse workforce and enable ourselves to be industry leaders in culture and gender representation while achieving the organizational resilience we set out to accomplish for others. So I want to thank you all for joining us. Have an amazing day. Happy Black History Month and take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.